John Corzine heading back to the Hill today, the House, for yet another hearing on MF Global. It'll be his third congressional hearing in a week. He's already faced the Ag Committee in both the House and the Senate, and today he'll be questioned by the House Financial Services Committee. Republican Congressman Ed Royce from California, a member of that committee, joins us this morning from the Hill. Congressman, good to see you this morning.
Good to be with you.
So much has already been said and asked. What's at the top of your list of questions today?
Well, first, where did the money go? You've got $1 billion that's missing here. But second, you had the CME witness testify on Tuesday that Mr. Corzine knew, in fact, that money had been borrowed out of the segregated accounts. That is an important question. And lastly, for a firm that was bleeding cash, as his was, with the amount of losses, $137 million the prior year, with the poor credit rating, and with the regulatory compliance issues that they faced, how were they able to get that designation as a primary dealer from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York? Did political pull play a role in this? Because objectively, you'd have to ask yourself how a firm in that condition, in that situation, would be able to get the type of designation that Mr. Corzine wanted in order, as in his words, to make them a mini Goldman, in order to increase their status and basically increase their leverage, because that's what they were able to do.
Right. He has addressed some of that in his opening statement, talking about the frequency with which he would talk to a Gensler or a Shapiro about these kinds of things. Do you not take him at his word?
Well, we're going to have an opportunity to talk to the New York Fed about this. And what we want to ask the New York Fed is, here you have 80 regulatory actions since '97 taken against the firm. Here you have clearly a firm in trouble in terms of the magnitude of the losses. And then on top of that, you also have the poor credit rating that the firm faced. Why would the New York Fed designate that firm, give them that status? We have questions in terms of the CFTC's role in terms of protecting those segregated accounts. But one of the other questions I would have is, given the history with Bear Stearns, given Lehman and the over leverage 30-to-1 that we saw, here's a situation where Mr. Corzine was levered 40-to-1, and it is unprecedented in our country's history, to my knowledge, in terms of those sacrosanct, segregated accounts, to have that breached,
right,
and especially to a tune of this magnitude. No, there are some very big questions here, especially in light of the CME testimony on Tuesday. Does he now reverse his position in terms of whether or not he knew, based upon what CME has testified? That's a big question for us.
Part of the danger of agreeing to speak out on the Hill. And then, of course, you've got some fresh news to chew on. Jill Summers from the CFTC now saying that they have a more complete picture of these money transfers. And in her words, and I'm quoting here, "We certainly don't want to lead anyone to believe we don't know what happened. We do know, and we see where all the transactions went," telling Reuters in an interview on Wednesday. What do you make of those statements?
Well, it would have been helpful to know some of this in real time. It would have been helpful to, this was on their watch, to have had some of this surface. You could see how this could happen with small sums of money, but when we're talking about $1.2 billion, at that point, yes, what we make of this is that this would be helpful to find out sooner rather than later. And it's just such a question of the public trust. I mean, what we've done now, by having this happen once, we've led to a situation, this is my concern, where for a lot of the smaller firms, what if people begin to question that? And what if instead, for these too big to fail firms, it assists them in terms of basically having access to more capital. This thing is a tragedy, and it demands answers.
It's easy for the public to grasp John Corzine. He was the head of the company that went bankrupt. But at the same time, is the root of the problem really the model of self-regulation that had existed in the industry? Should we really be turning the tables on the CFTC and the CME for allowing this to happen under their watch? At what point do we say, why did it happen, guys?
Right. And at what point do we also say, was there maybe a blind eye turned? This is an individual who was a governor, a senator. The thing I worry most about, especially post Dodd-Frank, is the way in which political pull might come into play. I want to see the rules objectively enforced for everyone. And when I see someone who had that kind of influence as a senator suddenly be able to sit down with the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and get a designation, which on the face of it, based upon the record for the firm, would be very, very questionable. Did that kind of influence, did political pull play a role? Because unless the CFTC and the SEC are going to move forward with very objective criteria and turn a blind eye to the possible influence of people who have political connections, we've got a problem in terms of the rule of law. And I think all of that will come out in the hearing as well.
Congressman will be watching. We'll see you this afternoon, of course, Congressman Royce, along with that hearing on the Hill.